Fawaz Gerges joins me live from London. He's a professor of international relations at the London School of Economics. Great to have you here with us on TRT World. So, many developments, a lot to unpack here, certainly. But I want to talk about the United States and President Donald Trump, or Donald Trump's administration. So, over the past few days, some interesting developments have taken place. For example, now Trump administration issuing a stark warning to the Israelis that if you move forward with the illegal annexation of occupied West Bank, we might end all our support. And then, of course, Donald Trump saying in this Time magazine interview that, there is a possibility that Barghouti might be released. So is this the Trump administration or Donald Trump perhaps acknowledging that just like Netanyahu, he can also not go against the whole world because the majority opinion in the world is for Palestine?
Well, I hope you're right. I hope these are the underlying lessons that we can take from what President Trump has said in the past few days. But I don't take everything that President Trump says very seriously. We have to be very cautious. Look, everything you have been discussing with your guest in the past half an hour, we're talking about the potential or the possibility of the annexation of the occupied West Bank. We are not talking about the potential of Palestinian state, are we? This is where we are today. I mean, look what Marco Rubio said today. He said the annexation of the West Bank at this time, he said at this time, might be counterproductive to the peace deal in Gaza. At this time, it might be for Gaza, not for a Palestinian state. No one is mentioning a Palestinian state. No one, neither Trump, nor Vance, nor Marco Rubio. So point one. Point two, if you ask me what is the most important point for your audience, the most important point is that the Trump administration is very concerned that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu could basically renew the war. In fact, Trump administration officials leaked information to the New York Times yesterday saying they are deeply concerned that Benjamin Netanyahu might vacate the ceasefire deal. And that's why the flurry of U.S. officials who have visited Israel in the past few days, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, JD Vance, and now Marco Rubio, they are really worried that Benjamin Netanyahu got his hostages back and now he's trying to basically renew the war. I mean, think of what has happened in the past 12 days since the ceasefire has been achieved. More than 80 Israeli violations of the ceasefire. 97 Palestinians have been killed. Humanitarian aid has not really reached Gaza, according to 41 humanitarian organizations. No escalation of humanitarian aid, urgent aid to Gaza. So all in all, we have to wait and see. But I think the most important point is that the Trump administration is trying to hold Netanyahu to his word, not to renew the war and begin the process of the second phase of the ceasefire in Gaza.
Like you pointed out, Professor, nothing in reality has changed for the Palestinians in Gaza. As you pointed out, more than 90 Palestinians killed since the ceasefire came into effect. And of course, so we still have this hindrance to the entry of humanitarian aid into the besieged enclave. But when we look at the bigger picture, again, talking about Donald Trump, you indicated there that, of course, there's a lot of pressure on the Trump administration right now. And Donald Trump personally is very concerned about Netanyahu violating the ceasefire deal. And this is primarily why, of course, he had his special envoys, the Vice President in Israel, trying to negotiate and pressure Netanyahu not to violate. But here's the thing. Israel's track record under Netanyahu, if I may, is pathetic when it comes to abiding by ceasefire deals. Not just in Gaza, but across the region. We can talk about Lebanon, we can talk about Syria. Israel has violated ceasefire agreements time and time again. So based on that track record, I think it's fair to say that it wouldn't be surprising to anyone if Netanyahu breaks this ceasefire deal. My question is, if such a thing happens, how embarrassing do you think it's going to be for Donald Trump?
Well, I mean, I think one of the reasons we are seeing, I mean, the coming to Israel, the arrival in Israel of top American officials, the Vice President, the Secretary of State, the two architects of the ceasefire, because the Trump administration wants the ceasefire to basically be operational. This is a personal accomplishment for personal Trump. Personal Trump has been boasting about the fact that his ceasefire deal is basically a great historical achievement. He talks about 3,000 years, one of the most important developments in the past 3,000 years. Of course, that's pure exaggeration. It's mainly theatrics and by Donald Trump. But this is important personally for Donald Trump, and that's why he wants the deal to survive. But in fact, your question is very important. Have we been talking about the pulling out, the end of Israeli military occupation of Gaza? Israel occupies 53% of Gaza. Everyone is talking about disarming Hamas. Have you heard a word about the administration exerting pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu to pull out his army completely from Gaza? Not yet. And what I fear, what I fear is that I don't think we're going to see the renewal of Israel's all-out war in Gaza. I think this is over. What we're going to see is a low-intensity war, that Israel will continue to occupy a majority of the land in Gaza and carry out attacks in Gaza as it has done in Lebanon, in Syria, in the West Bank. I mean, think about it. Israel signed a peace deal with Lebanon more than a year ago. Yet Israel, according to the Lebanese army, has violated the ceasefire more than 4,000 times. Yesterday, last night, it carried out multiple attacks on Lebanon. So my take on it, sadly and tragically, for the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, Israel will continue to have a freedom of action, will continue to occupy large parts of Gaza and continue to attack targets it deems threatening to its security. But the bigger point, the larger point, of course, the ceasefire is important in Gaza. Of course, the ceasefire is important in Lebanon and Syria and other places. I think the key point, no one is talking about the future Palestinian state. No one is talking about the Palestinians' basic rights, the right to self-determination, to basically end Israeli occupation, not just from Gaza, but also from the West Bank and East Jerusalem. And this is the missing link in everything that we're talking about.
Very strong words there. Well said, Professor Fawaz Gerges. Thanks very much for joining me here on TRT World. Really appreciate your taking out the time.